Vad är omvänd ordföljd? What is switched word order in Swedish? Is it obligatory or is it something optional? What is it? Vad är det i svenska? Idag ska vi lära oss omvänd ordföljd i enkla huvudsatser. Today we're going to repeat or learn how to apply switched word order in easy main clauses. Vi börjar med rak ordföljd. Let's start with straight word order, the basic word order in Swedish. En huvudsats kan i svenska ha rak eller omvänd ordföljd. A straight word order can in Swedish have straight or switched word order. I rak ordföljd kommer subjektet före verbet. In straight word order, the subject comes before the verb. Så vi har subjekt, verb och objekt. We have the SVO structure. It's actually the same also for English. Till exempel, for example, studenterna går till universitetet. The students go to the university. Läraren förbereder lektionen. The teacher prepares the lesson. De beställer mat på restaurangen. They order food in restaurant. Vi går på bio klockan 9. We go to the cinema 9 o'clock. So you see, when we translate them into English, the word order doesn't change. So the SVO structure, subject, verb, object, is quite universal. It also applies to both Swedish and English. Now, the switched word order, omvänd ordföljd. The switched word order is very special for Swedish. It is different than what you would do in English. And this is something obligatory. So this means that it is not something flexible that you can choose to do, but you have to when you use, for example, adverbial to begin a sentence. En huvudsats kan också ha omvänd ordföljd. Subjektet står efter verbet när meningen inleds med exempelvis uttryck för tid, plats eller med en bisats. So a main clause can also have switched word order. The subject is placed after the verb when the sentence is led by, for example, expressions for time, place, or with a subordinate clause. So the expressions for time, place, or a subordinate clause here is actually referring to adverbial in a sentence structure. So adverbials are another name for all this category. It is something you add to a sentence to explain, for example, the time perspective, the position, and maybe the reason why, or maybe some premises you want to add to a sentence. So after the adverbials, you would and you should apply the switched word order in Swedish. Omvänd ordföljd. Så vi kan titta på några exempel. Let's see some examples. Nu går studenterna till universitetet. Nu går studenterna till universitetet. Now the students go to the university. What would you say in English? So in English you would say, now the student go. Now the students go. So after adverbial now, in English you start with subject anyway. But in Swedish, you need to switch the place of subject and verb after adverbial. Till exempel, du säger nu går studenterna till universitetet. På kvällarna förbereder läraren lektionen. At the evenings, the teacher prepares for the lesson. So in English, at evenings, in the evenings, you start a sentence with adverbial, but still you start with the teacher after the adverbial, but not in Swedish. In Swedish, the verb after adverbial. På kvällarna förbereder läraren lektionen. 7:00 beställer de mat på restaurangen. 7 o'clock, they order food in the restaurant. Så 7:00 beställer de mat på restaurangen. I Stockholm går vi ofta på teater. In English you would say, in Stockholm we oftenly go to the theater. I Stockholm går vi ofta på teater i svenska. So now let's summarize a little bit. In those cases, you have adverbial first, for example, i Stockholm, and then you switch the place for the verb and subject. So in English, you would say, in Stockholm we go. But in Swedish, you would say, i Stockholm går vi. So now the subject is placed after the verb because you don't have a subject before verb in this case. And then after the subject, you have the adverb, ofta. So now let's talk a little bit more about adverb in a sentence. But before that, I forgot we have the last example actually here. Eftersom det regnar stannar vi inne. Eftersom det regnar stannar vi inne. Because it rains, we stay inside. So in this case, it's more complicated because we start a sentence with a subordinate clause. But actually, this subordinate clause has the same function as all these time and place prepositions. So, eftersom det regnar, it's also an adverbial to explain why, instead of explaining when or where. Now it explains why. And now we use a subordinate clause to fill this function, but it's still itself, the whole subordinate clause functions as adverbials in this main clause. That's why after this adverbial, we apply the switched word order. Så här måste vi använda omvänd ordföljd. Nu ska vi prata om negation och satsadverb i huvudsatser. Now let's talk about negation and adverb in a main clause, where we should put them. Var ska vi placera dem? Vi kan titta på några exempel. Let's see some examples. Jag vet inte. In English you would say, I don't know. So I don't know. You have negation actually before the verb sometimes in English, sometimes after the verb, sometimes before. But in Swedish, in a main clause, you place the negation always after the main verb. Jag vet inte. Han vill alltid äta pizza. In English, he always wants to eat pizza. But in Swedish, han vill alltid äta pizza. Alltid efter verbet vill. Hon vill inte göra läxor idag. She don't want to do the homework today. She doesn't want to, sorry. Hon vill inte göra läxor idag. Vill inte på svenska. Så Negation och satsade verb i huvudsatser placeras efter verbet. So both negation and other adverbs that describes the main verb should be placed after the main verb in Swedish. Här kommer några intressanta fall. Here let's explore some interesting cases which you rarely see in English. So because we love the switch word order in Swedish, we can play with this structure even more. But be careful, the cases I'm talking about now are kind of rare, so you don't see them every day, and it is also not something you can apply flexibly. So you can just say more or less in those cases, exactly in those expressions. So you cannot apply this structure to all cases. Okay, bearing this in mind, let's continue. På svenska kan du säga det gillar jag. Det gillar jag. So what does it mean in Swedish? If you've already heard a lot Swedish, you maybe already know. So in this structure, actually, det gillar jag, det is the object. So in Swedish here, it is possible to start a sentence with object. So if I translate this into English, it would be something like, this I like. But remember, in Swedish we do the switched word order, det gillar jag. I svenska kan du också säga, så är det. Så är det. Det är samma struktur, it's the same structure. Så is the object or the preposition. So in English, it's so it is, or like this it is. Or it is like this, which is probably more commonly used in English. It is like this. It is so. Men på svenska kan du säga så är det. But let's don't confuse so in this case with the other case of som, because so is also in Swedish used as a conjunction to explain the consequence of something. For example, when you say jag är sjuk, så jag kan inte komma. I am sick, so I cannot come. In this case, so is actually a conjunction. But in the examples here, så är det, så here is actually used as a adverbial because so has two meanings. Here, so means actually like this, which is used as an adverbial to explain how, in which way. Okej, vi kan fortsätta. Let's continue. Du kan säga det kan jag göra. Det kan jag göra. Now it's a slightly more complicated example because now the helping verb, auxiliary verb is involved. Det kan jag göra. Så det kan göra betyder this I can do. Du kan också säga så kan du göra. Like this you can do. Så kan du göra. Now, let's do a test. Hur säger man det i rak ordföljd? How to translate them to Swedish in straight word order. Första frågan, the first question. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. På svenska, jag förstår inte det. Jag förstår inte det. Nästa. I always drink a cup of coffee in the morning. I always drink a cup of coffee in the morning. På svenska. Jag dricker alltid en kopp kaffe på morgonen. Jag dricker alltid en kopp kaffe på morgonen. Now, let's do a test on switched word order. Hur säger man det i omvänd ordföljd? How to translate the following sentences into Swedish with switched word order. Yesterday I didn't understand it. Yesterday I didn't understand it. Igår förstod jag inte det. Igår förstod jag inte det. Så förstod efter igår och sen subjekt. Nästa. In the morning I always drink a cup of coffee. In the morning I always drink a cup of coffee. På morgonen dricker jag alltid en kopp kaffe. På morgonen dricker jag alltid en kopp kaffe. Så på morgonen, adverbial, dricker verb, jag subjekt, alltid satsat verb, en kopp kaffe, objekt. Okej, jag hoppas nu att ni har förstått hur omvänd ordföljd fungerar i svenska. Now I hope you've understand how the switch order and straight word order works in Swedish. That's everything for today, and next time we're going to explore further into the word order with subordinate clauses, which is more complicated. So, see you next time. Vi ses nästa gång. Tack så mycket för idag.